A tractor with a relaxed familiarity, as if it were part of his own body. The tractor sputters, coughs, then settles into a steady rhythm. Within moments, it's gliding across the field, pulling an empty grain wagon in its wake. Heinrich murmurs beside him, "The machines do the heavy work. Then only guide them." It seems obvious now, painfully obvious. Here, the land submits to machinery, and machinery submits to no one. A sudden break in routine mid-afternoon. The sky dims slightly as a cloud drifts across. The sun, the first true breeze of the day, whispers through the wheat. Karl and Heinrich are hauling full cotton sacks toward the weighing station when a whistle pierces the air. Two sharp blasts. Johnson waves urgently from the far end of the field. The tractors begin slowing, the combines downshift, their engines dropping in pitch. A field hand jogs past the POWs, shouting, "Stormfront coming in." Karl looks up and his breath catches. Out beyond the western horizon, a dark smudge swells like ink in water. Clouds stack on top of each other in fast-building layers, deep blue turning almost black. A low rumble of thunder rolls across the plains, but nothing prepares him for what happens next. The Johnson family springs into action like a trained unit. Tractors peel away from the fields. Workers shout orders in every direction. The combines pivot with shocking speed, heading toward the storage silos. Karl stands frozen until a guard snaps at him, "Move. Help them button down the storage sheds." The POWs run, German and American, side by side in a frantic race against the incoming storm, sheltering the machines. Karl and Heinrich follow Mr. Johnson toward a row of long wooden sheds. The farmer pulls open a sliding door. Inside sits another tractor, sleek, bright yellow, smelling of oil and earth. Johnson gestures to the POWs, "Get those tarps tied down tight. If we lose the roof, we lose half the crop." Karl doesn't need a translation. He grabs a corner of thick canvas and helps drag it across the machinery. His muscles strain. Rain begins to patter lightly on the ground. Lightning flickers on the horizon, briefly illuminating the distant silhouettes of the combines speeding toward cover. Karl had never imagined machines could move so quickly, not farm machines, not these steel giants. As he ties the final knot, a heavy raindrop splashes onto his nose, and then, as if someone had cut open the sky, the storm unleashes itself. Wind howls, rain hammers the shed walls, dust turns to mud. In seconds, the Germans and Americans duck under the overhang, panting, soaked, watching as sheets of water ripple across the fields. But the grain is safe, the machines are safe, the farm is safe. Johnson exhales in relief. Caught it just in time. He slaps Karl on the shoulder lightly, but enough to make the young POW blink in confusion. "Good work." Karl has no words. No German farmer had ever thanked him like that. Certainly no American. Storm refuge in the machine shed. The rain intensifies, drumming on the tin roof like artillery. Inside the shed, the air smells of wet earth, hot metal, diesel, and hay. The POWs sit in a line along the wall. The American workers sit on the opposite side. Between them, a silent truce formed by exhaustion. A young American boy, Freddie Johnson, age 13, drops onto a crate. shaking water from his hair. He glances at Carl, then grins. Shyly, "You ever see a combine before?" Carl hesitates, then answers softly, Not like these, Freddy." Brightens, "They're the new McCormicks. Got him last season. Pa says in a few years, there'll be even bigger ones. Maybe ones that don't need drivers." Carl's eyebrows shoot up. "No drivers, how would that work?" Freddy shrugs. "Engineers figure out everything eventually." The simplicity of the boy's confidence hits Carl harder than the storm. A world where Americans assume more innovation is guaranteed, where machines grow like living things, where progress is automatic inevitable. In Germany, progress was forced, strained, wrung from limited resources and desperate planning. Here, progress is expected. The storm rumbles overhead. A German farmer speaks. Adolf Meisinger, silent until now, finally speaks. He addresses Johnson directly, voice steady, heavy with truth. "In my village, we cut wheat with scythes, horse-drawn harvesters for the wealthy only. A farm this size would need 100 men." Johnson nods quietly. "Machines do what men used to, and they don't complain much." Adolf stares at the combine parked nearby, its metal slick with rain, its harvesting teeth gleaming faintly in the dim light. "This one machine replaces me, replaces all my neighbors." Johnson answers without cruelty, "Not replaces. Frees. Lets us grow more, feed more, take care of the land better." Carl glances at Adolf's trembling hands. He knows this moment is changing the man, changing all of them. What the storm reveals, the storm begins to ease, rain becoming a soft patter. Light filters through the cracks in the shed walls, illuminating the combine's massive wheels. Carl steps closer, compelled by something he cannot name. He touches the metal surface. It's warm even after the storm. A machine that works through heat, rain, and darkness. A machine that never tires. A machine that can feed thousands. And that moment, Carl understands something that no officer, no propaganda minister, no lecture in the Hitler Youth had ever explained. Germany had the army. America had the engine. Storms end, and the return of the machines. The rain tapers off gradually, leaving behind a shimmering landscape. The wheat fields, though soaked, still stand intact, saved by the frantic scramble before the storm hit. Water drips from the shed roof in steady rhythms, like long, metallic sighs. Johnson steps out first, scanning the sky with narrowed eyes. The horizon glows pale gold now, clouds breaking apart in jagged streaks. Sunlight filters through and glints off the steel frames of the machines parked outside. Storms past. He calls, "Back to work." The Americans take their positions as if nothing happened, like a drill team reforming after a brief pause. And the POWs, still stunned by the speed and vigilance of the farm crew, follow. Carl steps into ankle-deep mud. The ground sucks at his boots, but the machinery barely falters. The tractors churn through wet soil with ease. The combines fire up again, engines belting out renewed purpose. It's as if the farm is a living creature, shrugging off the storm and continuing its endless cycle. Carl glances back once at the shed. A single thought burns through him. Germany would have stopped. Americans don't. Night work by late afternoon. The storm has cooled the air. A faint wind drifts across the fields, carrying the smell of wet wheat and diesel. The shadows Lengthen. The sun sinks, and normal farm day in Germany would be ending. But not here, Carl watches as workers begin setting up portable electric lamp stall metal poles with wide reflector heads. Wires snake across the ground, connected to a humming generator behind the barn. Johnson checks the fuel level, then nods with satisfaction. Good, we'll go through the night. The POWs exchange looks of disbelief. All night. Heinrich whispers. Adolf Meisinger shakes his head. Impossible. A tractor cannot run for that long now. Tractor roars to life beside him. Then another. Then another. A pale yellow glow spills across the fields as the lamps flicker on, illuminating the wheat like daylight distilled into beams. Carl stands rooted to the spot. Machines working under electric light, under a night sky, under the cooling air after a storm. In Germany, nighttime was an enemy, a period of silence, a surrender to nature. Here, nighttime is simply another shift. The generator's hum deepens as the combine engines ignite, vibrating the ground beneath Carl's feet. The field becomes a beacon of industry, a glowing island of human will. The children who don't tire. Freddie Johnson, the 13-year-old, walks past with a coil of electric cable over his shoulder. He nods at Carl, as if this were the most natural work in the world. You'll get used to it, he says casually. Carl stares at him in disbelief. You work at night? Freddie shrugs. If we don't, the wheat spoils. Weather's rough this season. Pa says the war doesn't wait. Carl thinks about the Hitler youth drills he endured as a teenager, marching miles with aching feet for glory. Here, a bow works to keep wheat dry, and somehow it feels more purposeful. Younger POW, barely 19, mutters from behind. In Germany, boys fight. In America, boys farm. That is why they win. Carl doesn't disagree. A lesson in abundance. The evening stretches into night. The work continues under a moonless sky. Carl helps load cotton onto trailers. He hefts bundles of wheat chaff. He wipes sweat mixed with rain from his brow. Hours pass. His muscles burn. His breath grows shaky. Yet the machines, they sound exactly as they did at midday. The combines hum. The tractors rumble. The milking shed machine still pulses with rhythmic certainty. No fatigue, no hesitation, no fear of collapsing. Every part of this farm is built around a concept Carl has never considered: make nature yield, not by strength, but by scale. In the distance, another tractor approaches, this one driven by Mrs. Johnson, her hair tied back under a cloth, her posture steady as she navigates the muddy terrain. Carl watches her pass, stunned by the normalcy of it. In Germany, most women labored in factories, ration lines, and ruins. Here, they command machines that multiply their strength tenfold. The tractor that shouldn't exist. Near 10 p.m., Carl is unloading a wagon when he hears an unfamiliar sound, deeper, louder, almost like a tank engine. He turns. His heart nearly stops. A massive tractor rolls out of the barn, far larger than the John Deeres he's seen. Its tires are nearly as tall as a man. Its body is thick, industrial, almost armored. Heinrich breathes the words, Ein Dieselkoloss, a diesel colossus. The guard beside them laughs. That's the International Harvester WD-40. Diesel model. Bought it back in '38. Still runs like a champ. The POWs stare in silence as the machine lumbers forward, lantern mounted on its front, illuminating the lines of mud. Adolf Meisinger chokes on his own breath. This, one tractor, would plow every field in my region. Alone. Carl swallows hard, throat tight. This is not a battlefield. This is not a factory. This is a farm. An ordinary American farm. Yet it wields industrial power Germany cannot replicate even in wartime. Carl thinks of the Tiger tank, powerful but unreliable, impossible to maintain without specialized tools. And he looks at this tractor, older than the war, still running like brand new. What does it mean, he wonders, when a farmer has a machine Germany could barely build for its army? Midnight in Texas. By midnight, a warm breeze returns. The stars peek out behind the thinning clouds. The fields glow under the electric lamps, swaying with life even at this late hour. Carl's arms tremble from work, but he finds himself pausing to watch the combines. Their silhouettes glide through the artificial light like steel ships navigating a golden sea. He closes his eyes. For a moment, the sounds blend together: the diesel engines, the generators hum, the rustle of sacks being loaded, the distant laughter of American workers, a country that does not sleep because it does not need to. He thinks of his father's small farm to oxen, an old plow, a barn with no electricity. He thinks of ration books, bombed out rail lines, horses dropping dead from exhaustion on muddy roads to the Eastern Front. Now he sees the truth with crushing clarity. America did not just have more food. America had infinite food. The scale revealed near 1 o'clock a.m. The night air cools. A thin fog rises from the damp earth, drifting around the machinery like ghostly veils. The soft crackle of insects fills the gaps between engine noises. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cries, a lonely sound swallowed instantly by the hum of generators. Carl's back aches. His shirt clings to his skin. Every part of him is exhausted, yet the Americans work with steady and broken rhythm. It is then that Mr. Johnson approaches the POWs with a clipboard under one arm, lantern in hand. He checks the grain intake numbers, nods, and says calmly, "Tonight we'll pass 50,000 bushels." Heinrich freezes. 50,000, 50,000. Johnson doesn't notice their shock. He simply adjusts his pencil behind his ear and walks on. Carl turns slowly, looking across the rows of wagons, each one a mountain of wheat glinting under electric light. 50,000 bushels. And one night, from one farm. Carl's mind races. Back home, the entire district around Ulm rarely produced more than 60,000 in a year. Entire communities worked from dawn to dusk, through rain, through frost, praying that disease or blight wouldn't steal their harvest. And here, one family, with machines, could match it in days. Carl's knees weaken. For the first time, he understands why America never feared rationing. Not really. Not the way Germany did. A conversation at the water barrel during a short break. Carl steps toward the water barrel placed by the lamp tower. He cups his hands and drinks deeply, the cold water shocking against his dry tongue. An American field hand walks over a weary, middle-aged Man with a permanent sunburn and kind eyes. His name tag reads Charlie McBride. You Germans doing? All right, Charlie asks. Carl nods cautiously. Charlie leans against the barrel. You boys work hard. Surprising truth. Be told. Thought you'd, I dunno, be mad about helping us. Carl frowned slightly. He had expected suspicion or hostility, not this strange openness. He answers slowly, in accented English. We do not understand. This farm, it is enormous. Machines everywhere. Lights at night. Charlie chuckles. This ain't enormous. You should see farms up in Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. Thousands of acres, machines bigger than houses. Some folks got so much land, you could drive half a day and still be on the same property. Carl's lips part. Half a day, yep. Charlie smirks. Ain't nothing special. This is America, Carl feels. Something inside him twists not envy, but the slow dawning of a truth he had never been allowed to consider. His entire understanding of agriculture, of national strength, of the limits of human labor, was wrong. Germany had always believed itself efficient, disciplined, industrious. But America wasn't efficient. It was limitless. A glimpse into the ledger around 2:00 a.m. Johnson calls the POWs into the barn for a brief rest. The lanterns cast long shadows against walls lined with tools, wrenches the size of a child's arm, drums of oil, belts, spare gears, coils of rope, stacks of tires. In one corner sits a workbench with open logbooks. Carl can't help glancing at them. Rows of numbers fill the pages columns. For fuel usage, machine hours, maintenance costs. Heinrich leans over his shoulder, whispering, "This is like a factory ledger, not a farm." Carl nods. One entry catches his eye. Fuel allocated, 2,500 gallons a week. War priority class. He stares at the number. 2,500 gallons. For one farm. In Germany, civilians received ration coupons measured in liters. Farmers begged for fuel. Tractor usage was limited. Horses bore the burden of war. Here, they pour gasoline into machines like water into a well. Freddy's voice pipes up behind them. "Pa tracks everything. Says if we run things right, this farm alone could feed a whole battalion overseas." Carl closes the ledger slowly, his breath unsteady. A single farm, feeding an entire military unit. His worldview fractures at the edges. He feels as though his life until now was lived inside a small dark room and somebody has suddenly opened a door to a much larger world. The real meaning of mechanization. Work resumes. Night deepens. Stars scatter above them, shimmering like pinpricks in velvet. The combines continue their endless march across the fields. The diesel colossus drags yet another wagon toward the silo. The generator hums with quiet confidence. Carl pauses to watch the machines again, but this time, not with awe, with understanding. He sees the chain reaction clearly. More machines gives more harvest gives more food gives stronger armies gives longer wars gives victory. Germany had relied on courage, discipline, and speed. America relied on abundance. Carl wipes sweat from his neck and whispers to himself, "They will always outlast us." Because their land does not stop working. A moment of honesty around 3:00 a.m. Johnson approaches the POWs again as they load another wagon. He crosses his arms. "You boys ever seen farming like this?" The Germans shake their heads silently. Johnson studies them not smug, not proud, just matter of fact. Well, welcome to America. This is why our boys fight with full stomachs. This is why our factories run day and night. This is why we send food to Britain, to the Pacific, everywhere. He picks up a handful of wheat chaff and lets it fall through his fingers. This is our weapon. Carl meets his eyes and realizes Johnson isn't boasting. He's stating a truth so obvious to him that he cannot imagine a world where people think otherwise. A weapon, not steel, not oil. Explosives. Food. The POWs accept the truth as dawn approaches. The lamps are turned off one by one. The generator quiets. The tractors idle down. The field glows with the pale light of early morning. The POWs gather near the truck, their bodies exhausted, their minds overwhelmed. Adolf is the first to speak. Now I understand the war. This is the reason. We were never fighting an army. We were fighting a continent of machines. Heinrich swallows, eyes on the horizon. A continent that never sleeps. Carl says nothing. He cannot, because every thought he has left confirms the same crushing truth. Germany had spirit. America had capacity. And capacity wins wars. Slowly, without being told, the Germans climb into the truck for the ride back to camp. Their faces are blank, not with fear, but with revelation, a revelation that will follow them for the rest of their lives. The ride back to camp, the truck rumbles to life, its engine a low growl in the morning stillness. Dust rises behind the tires as it rolls down the dirt road, leaving the Johnson farm slowly shrinking behind them. The early light paints the fields in muted gold, the wheat still trembling from the night's labor. Carl sits near the tailgate, hands resting limply on his knees. His shirt is soaked with sweat and dew, his muscles stiff from 20 hours of work. But his mind is more awake than it has ever been. He watches the electric lamps standing tall in the field, now switched off and idle, even silent. They look powerful symbols of a country that simply refuses to stop. Heinrich sits beside him in stunned silence. Adolf Meisinger stares straight ahead, expression hollow. No one speaks, not yet. Even the American guards seem to sense something has changed. Private Riley takes a seat at the back of the truck and glances at the POWs with a mixture of curiosity and pity. Y'all did good tonight, he says quietly. Most folks can't keep up their first time. Carl looks at him not with resentment, but with a dawning humility. How, Carl begins, voice hoarse. How can one farm have so many machines? Riley grins. This is small. You ought to see a real operation. Carl closes his eyes. Small. The Americans think this is small. He realizes in that moment that German propaganda had never failed more completely than when it tried to describe the United States. The Third Reich spoke of America as decadent, weak, disorganized. Yet here, on what Americans call a small farm, Carl witnessed more mechanization than his entire district back home. Rival. At Camp Swift, when the truck finally pulls into the POW compound, the rising sun reveals the camp's watchtowers silhouetted against a burning orange sky. The Americans open the gate. and the prisoners step off the truck one by one, muscles trembling from exhaustion, other pose, well rested and preparing for breakfast. Watch them with curiosity. Some smirk, expecting complaints. Others expect stories of harsh treatment or backbreaking labor. But Karl says nothing, neither does Heinrich, neither does Adolf. They walk back to their barracks like men moving through fog. Inside, the hum of early morning chatter fills the tent. A few prisoners gather round, eager for gossip. Where did they send you? How much did you work? What are the Americans like? Were the guards cruel? Did you see horses, tools, oxen? What? Karl sits slowly on his cot. He looks up. No horses. Silence grows. No hand tools. No sits. No men bending over fields. Only machines. Everywhere. The others exchange confused glances. Karl continues, voice steady, as if speaking from another world. The Americans do not farm like we do. They do not rely on weather. They do not rely on men. They rely on engines. Adolf's voice follows, brittle and trembling. And these engines, they do not stop. Not for storms, not for night, not for anything. Barracks falls completely silent. A quiet breakfast later. At the mess hall, Karl sits with his tin tray of scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit. He stares at the food not with hunger, but with recognition. This breakfast exists because of the machines he saw last night. Hundreds, no, thousands of POWs across America eat meals like this every morning. American soldiers on every front eat the same. British civilians receive American wheat. Soviet armies receive American tinned meat. Allied navies run on American corn and soybeans. Every bite of food is another nail in the coffin of Germany's war effort. Karl pushes his fork through the eggs, watching them crumble. He whispers, "We lost this war before it began. We just did not know it." The camp interrogator that afternoon, the POWs are approached by Lieutenant James Walker, one of the American camp interrogators. He is young, soft-spoken, wearing wireframe glasses and carrying a clipboard. He greets the POWs politely. "I heard you were assigned to the Johnson place last night," he says. "I'd like to ask a few questions, if you don't mind." Karl, Heinrich, and Adolf exchange an easy looks but follow him to a small outdoor table. Walker sits. They stand. He begins gently, "What did you think?" Karl hesitates. "It was large." Walker smiles faintly. "It's one of the smaller farms in the county." Adolf's eyes widen. Heinrich mutters something under his breath. Walker leans forward. "Let me ask another way. Could Germany build something like that?" Karl answers before he can stop himself. "Germany could build one machine like that, yes, but not 1,000, and not without fuel, and not in every village." Walker nods. "That's why you're here," he says, "not to break rocks, not to punish you, but because our farms need hands until the machines are enough, and soon they will be." His tone is calm, not triumphant. "Machines," he says, "win long wars." He gathers his papers, stands, and offers a small nod. "Thank you. You may go." The POWs walk away in silence. The night Karl cannot sleep back in the barracks. Karl lies awake on his cot despite his exhaustion. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the giant tractor's lantern cutting through the dark. The combine pouring gold into the wagon, the generator lights turning night into day, the ledger listing thousands of gallons of fuel per week. Freddie the child driving a machine Carl's father could not have repaired. Mrs. Johnson commanding a tractor with quiet mastery, Charlie McBride shrugging at the scale of it all. Johnson's voice, "This is our weapon, a weapon made of wheat and steel." Carl presses a hand to his forehead. He had marched into France believing Germany stood on the brink of greatness, that the Reich was destined to reshape the world, that American farms were primitive places of laziness and excess. But now he knows the truth. Germany had built a war machine. America had built a civilization, and civilizations outlast armies. Carl's final realization just before dawn. Carl sits up, able to rest. The camp is quiet. A few guards walk the perimeter. The scent of dew drifts in through the canvas walls. He whispers to himself in German, soft and certain, almost ashamed, "Wir hatten keinen Sieg verdient. Nicht gegen sowas, nicht gegen ein Land, das niemals aufhört zu arbeiten." We never deserved victory. Not against this, not against a country that never stops working. He lies back slowly, and as the first light of morning touches the camp, Carl understands, finally, fully, irrevocably, the war was won far from the front lines, in the fields, in the barns, in the machines that fed millions. No Panzer, no Stuka, no artillery gun could defeat that